as it's played out in the media and kind of on the American landscape, it seems like part of the controversy, down deeper, is a controversy over who gets to define terrorism, who gets to define innocence. There's a narrative that the hijackers were absolutely evil, and of course saying anything about folks who died in 9/11 is sacrosanct because they're assumed to be absolutely innocent. How do you see, Mr. Means, that debate playing into how we're seeing the response to Ward's essay and Ward's statement? What's at stake in those definitions of terrorism and innocence?
Well, in the word control. I mean, it's 1984. It's the brave new world. It's everything that people abhor about totalitarianism. And it's racist. They've picked out an American Indian scholar, academic, and part of the intelligentsia of America to begin. You know, and I want to impress it. This is the beginning of the right-wing attack on the intelligentsia of America. We saw it, McCarthyism. I just happen to call it white maleism. And that's just exactly what it is. These ranting and raving commentators for Clear Channel and corporate media. It's shameless racism, and it's shameless control with no debate.
Well, in this immediate context where we are, the local media, but also in the national media through the O'Reilly program in Scarborough Country and Palazan and
USA Today.
The framing has been basically to support, I mean, quite explicitly designed to support the allegations that there is a basis to remove me from my position. A lot of that has taken the form of putting words in my mouth.
Are you accusing the U.S. government of purposely killing innocent Iraqi women and children? Is that what you're saying here?
And even when they read the text that they're supposedly interpreting, and I'm interacting with them and point out this is not what I said.
How can you not say that your writings constitute being pro-terrorist? You've heard.
I've been quoted as having advocated the deaths of millions of Americans.
Heard the governor of New York accuse you of that, the governor of Colorado, and even some of the folks you just heard in the pieces we aired.
I've been quoted as, or misquoted, actually. The statements are attributed to me of calling for 2-3 mini 911s. I have been alleged to have justified what I consider to be natural and inevitable, and I would point out one neither justifies nor advocates what's natural and inevitable. You might as well justify or advocate a glacier or a volcano. I mean, I advocate volcanoes, yeah, right. These sorts of things to create the misimpression, which in and of itself would not validate, legitimate a removal. Even if I had said those things, I would have the academic freedom to say them. But the fact of the matter is I haven't. They're attempting to create a public misimpression that would lead to a sensibility that would allow for the breaching of contract law and, in fact, constitutional law to effect a political removal. And there has essentially been no interruption in that. There are no real counterexamples in the first 10 days of this thing in terms of mainstream media, whether at the local level, where it has been absolutely virulent, or where it has been manifested in the national and international media through Fox News, in particular, in MSNBC, which runs a very, very close second. In some sense, Scarborough's been more virulent than anybody else in this mix, and that is MSNBC, and CNN, which is unfortunately not attempting to fulfill its reputed role as a liberal counterfoil to this rabid right media, but now is attempting to up them at their own game, with Palazan doing theater rather than interview, this false outrage that she keeps manifesting in the interview with me that I did last Friday evening, and so on. That's the nature of my experience, that it has been absolutely a concerted effort to line up with and reinforce and amplify the articulations of people who are flagrantly abusing their legal office, like the governor of this state.
I would like to just make a comment. What I see happening here is the government, in collusion with the corporate media, is creating a lynch mob. They're advocating a lynch mob to lynch Ward. Now, the danger in that, and it's my belief that the government of the state of Colorado, legislature and the governor, are in lockstep with the corporate media to incite some nut to kill him. This is lynch mob charges, lynch mob strategy to create a climate of fear. Let's get rid of this bane of society, this terrorist. And that's where I'm coming from, you know, because it's fear-based. And when you fear something, you want to remove it.
Are you alleging that it's actually a conspiracy, or are you saying...
I would say it warrants a class action lawsuit against these clowns to put them on notice that we understand what's happening. And conspiracy, I don't believe in conspiracy. I believe in fact. And there's enough fact out there in the news media to prove my point.
Not a conspiracy per se. Well, it's not to deny that certain of these people may be talking to one another. That's largely irrelevant to the fact that it's motivated by a confluence of interest, the perception of interest in terms of political dynamic. Okay. But Russell was not overstating the case. There have been shock jocks on KOA and other radio stations that have been accusing me of treason following the governor's rhetoric and therefore calling for me to be executed. Now, that's pretty straightforward. And there have been numerous death threats communicated by email, nothing directly by telephone, and I don't have any hard correspondence because you tend to leave fingerprints on paper, and so there would be a potential way of tracking it back to the threatener. But I make those available to anybody who wants them. That's the nature of the discourse that's whipped up, amplified, reinforced by the official rhetoric. So they're acting on the basis of a perception of interest that they have an opportunity now to basically line the academic divergent voices, dissidents, whatever you want to call us, up against the figurative wall and eliminate us and have a single chord discourse on politics in this country, which could be likened perhaps to CNN's Crossfire, which was one of the original framings of the sort of program where you have a supposed left-right interchange on a given issue, and on the right you have Bob Novak. And this is in the original program. On the right there's Bob Novak. Well, this is Truth in Advertising. This is truly the right. And on the left you have Tom Braden. And the first response to that naming is, who the hell is Tom Braden? And that in itself says what they did. Here's a prominent figure on the right and an unknown entity on the left. But then when you investigate who Tom Braden actually is, or was, he's still alive, but he's no longer a part of that program, CIA station chief in Italy after World War II, who is instrumental in subverting the Italian elections to prevent the left from coming to power. Now, exactly how he becomes a representative of left articulation is a little mysterious, I'd say, to say the least. So what you have as a left-right discourse is a right-wing voice counterpoised to a much further right-wing voice, and that's the nature of the framing they're trying to impose as a stamp on the entirety of the political discourse and debate in this country at this time.
Now, a number of things have been imputed to me. But what shall I call this? The Boulder, Denver equivalent of the National Enquirer at this point, or the Star. Couldn't make the case on the issue, and so now my pedigree becomes the issue. Can you call me? I got a very important question. I get a call today from an unregistered Irishman. Okay? Very important question. Can you put me in touch with some of your buddies from Vietnam? We're going to send a film crew to your high school. These people haven't seen me in 40 years. They have nothing to do with this. The issue was not sustainable, so I am to become the issue. Well, later for that. Later for that. My identity does not come from some punk editorial page editor at the Rocky Mountain News or the Boulder Daily Camera.